The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford is Andrew Dominik's 2007 adaptation of Ron Hansen's 1983 depiction of the infamous outlaw Jesse James and his eventual demise at the hand of Robert Ford, DP'd by Roger Deakins. Jesse James was a real figure in the 19th century who, alongside his brother and band of merry men, carried out an extensive number of robberies primarily in the state of Missouri. Roger Deakins is perhaps the most notorious cinematographer of the 21st century. With a back catalogue of some of the most famous and celebrated films of the past 2 to 3 decades and an extensive list of awards and nominations for his work, Deakins is the true embodiment of a painter, whose brush is light and canvas a cinema screen. The techniques he uses in this film not only create a beautiful aesthetic to be marvelled by any who aspire to make films, but is perfectly in line with the message the director is clearly trying to convey in each scene. The scene which I'll be discussing in this video is the iconic train robbery scene from the start of the film. The film is driven by two forces: the absolute power and majesty of Jesse James, and the seemingly innocent ambition of Robert Ford to stand in his shoes. Bob Ford is not present in this scene, as it solely is for the purpose of introducing Jesse. The scene excellently demonstrates his nature, without saying a single word. It does this by using the metaphor of the train arriving and meeting its match in Jesse, a dynamic represented via the cinematography and the sound. The intensity of the scene is one that is unparalleled in the film, and certainly has the ability to make the hairs stand up on the back of your neck. The real tension and power of this scene really comes from a particular old philosophical paradox, when an unstoppable object meets an immovable one. In this case we have Jesse versus the train. The first time we see the train is a glimmer of light emerging from total darkness on the screen. A 5K light Deakins has attached to the front cuts through the scene with such presence, consuming all in its path with dazzling brightness. Apart from the lanterns, which are not currently lit, the train light is the only source in the scene, meaning it manipulates everything we see in the frame. As it passes the ghostly masked men of Jesse's gang, who slowly pans their heads with it, entranced by its majesty, the light wraps and moulds the shadows around their already sinister faces, demonstrating its power over them and all that surrounds them. Even Frank, Jesse's brother and second in command. The lack of light sources in this dark scene creates harsh, deep shadows, complemented by Deakins' refusal to fill in any of these dark spaces with a bounce light, a decision which is the main visual element of the scene. The reason the grandeur and power behind the train is so significant, and why I've chosen to talk about this scene, is as previously mentioned, this unstoppable object is about to meet an immovable one. The frame here shifts the focus from the power of the train to the power of Jesse. Beautifully composed and lit, the silhouette of the man himself stands central in the frame, the whole world wrapped around him, trails of light passing through smoke in the air creating lines inwards towards the centre of the frame, where Jesse marches towards the camera, ready. The silhouette in theory could be any old gunslinger who happened to be wearing such a common hat of the time, but we know the figure's identity. Here, Deakins solidifies such a silhouette as an iconic frame, as it is repeated throughout the film. As Jesse's men scramble for their positions, sparks fly across the frame in front of them as the train desperately brakes, created by a special effects rig. The sparks are another excellent visual element, dashing across the dark frame, really emphasising the strain and energy Jesse is forcing the train to exercise. As the train approaches him in frame, the scene is still merely lit by a single 5K on the train and lanterns each figure is holding, dim 300-watt bulbs with flicker generators. But it now is also clear that bright runner lights on the side of the train are also visible to illuminate the smoke which so viciously pours out from underneath and the sides. As it halts, smoke erupts upwards, filling the frame, engulfing Jesse as he is being pulled into the depths of hell, a visual motif reminiscent of Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. During the shots facing the front of the train, Deakins places a reflector to catch some of the bounce off of the 5K to illuminate the front, as well as a number of gag lights under the train to illuminate the smoke as it pours out the front. As he does for most of the film, Deakins keeps the camera either static or with minor tilts and pans, mirroring the calm and collective nature of Jesse in the scene. The only exception to this is the opposing chaos the train represents. in the powerful shot where it hits the camera, juddering vigorously as it is pushed back, a jarring interruption to the train's path. The design and blocking of the scene is also very carefully thought out in order to best encapsulate the empty soul of Jesse James. Set in the dark, remote woodland of rural Missouri, Jesse stands and is always framed, alone, whilst his men gather at the side of the track in a group. Whilst they wear white bags over their heads, Jesse and his brother Frank don a far more sleek and simple black bandana across their face, setting them aside as protagonists in the heist. The colour palette conforms to one of the two consistent shades in the film, a deep and unsettling yellow, caused by the light from the flickering lanterns. Whilst in many films orange can be associated with feelings of warmth and comfort, in this film I as an audience member received more of a deadly, burning sensation from this grade, connoting the idea of the unstable and reckless desire that resides in these men's hearts. With regards to sound, there are two pieces of audio which add gravity to the sequence. The first is the diegetic, ominous sound of the train approaching. This begins just as the audience sees the distant light of the train approaching, starting the height of the building tension, and emphasising the impending power of the 400,000-pound bullet which has arrived. This is then briefly faded out, to make way for the powerful piece of theme music which is present throughout the film, composed by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis. The music perfectly instills a sense of oncoming dread in the audience, seemingly to represent the thematic weight of the train, but of course as the scene develops, and is consistent throughout the film, the audience becomes aware that this is the theme music for the oncoming dread that is Jesse. In the pinnacle shot of the train approaching the camera, and subsequently hitting it with force, the diegetic sound of the train is reintroduced, getting louder and louder, until the booming impact of it colliding with the audience. As the camera shakes under the impact of the train pushing it forward, the sound is overwhelming. The weight of the audio continues to build as the brakes violently screech, sparks fly, and the train gradually comes to a halt under the resistance of Jesse. The simplicity of the sound design perfectly complements both the intensity and realism of the scene, and the calm and collective manner in which Jesse and his gang execute the mission. I hope this video essay successfully demonstrates why this scene is so impactful, from a film which I believe to be one of the best of the 21st century, a beautiful balance of stunning cinematography and dynamic, engaging relationships and character developments, which managed to maintain my undivided attention through a hefty 2 hours and 40 minutes. With this film, amongst his many other masterpieces, Deakins has solidified himself as my favourite cinematographer, and an individual from which much can be learned, putting his mark on a variety of wonderful filmic styles, always moving forward with the times. But, as this sequence shows, despite how visually inspiring a shot may be, cinematography should always be the pursuit of pure cinema, and the art of storytelling through the tools at your disposal.